The following podcast is intended to be of a general nature, will not be suitable for everyone, and should not be treated as a specific recommendation. We recommend taking professional advice before entering into any obligation or transaction. The information provided does not constitute investment advice and should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or offer to sell a security.
Right, welcome back to the Beyond the Boardroom podcast, episode 3. Matthew, welcome back.
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Obviously, it was a couple of months since I was last on the first episode we did, and obviously last month you had Andrew DeGroot on.
Absolutely. Yep.
Which was really interesting, actually. Being in the room when that podcast was being filmed, I think it gave a really good insight into kind of the wider realm of how big corporate structure can actually benefit small business.
Yeah, I think it's the usual trap that a lot of small businesses fall into is somebody entrepreneurial sets up a business, and then all of a sudden you're sort of caught in the headlights of reality. As your business grows, you then find yourself struggling, thinking, what do I do? Because I have no experience.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I think you alluded to it, that actually to run a successful business, you have to be a marketer, a financier, you have to be an operations and HR person, and realistically...
And a manager.
And that's sometimes the most
Absolutely.
daunting part is actually, especially when you start to grow and bring a team within you, how do you make sure that keeps running smoothly and actually give up a little bit of control, I think, was one of the big takeaways.
That's one of the big things, isn't it? Being able to delegate. Let's face it, people who are successful at running businesses are usually the kind of people who are, they're big picture people. They tend to be... jack of all trades, master of none. So they're not an expert at anything, but they know how to delegate and they know how to get the right people motivated to make the team work, make the dream work.
Well, talking of dreams, since we last been on, there seems to have been a lot of conversation, obviously, around our Thrive by 35 campaign, which has started taking off, which is brilliant.
Yeah, it's been really exciting.
A lot of conversations, and we've done a few seminars now with some legal firms around our part of the world, and lots of businesses seem quite interested in that. But it also tied into a lot of things that have been coming out recently from the government. And I know it's something that you really wanted to talk about this month, particularly around some of the IHT and savings kind of issues that we've seen since we've done the last podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's since I actually sort of started writing some notes for this podcast, there was an interesting article that came out in the Telegraph overnight, which was just talking about the fact that the government's running out of money, it's paying huge amounts for its debt, we're now borrowing money to pay for the interest on that debt. So they're scrabbling around desperately trying to find other places to fill the holes without really addressing the fundamental problems of government overspend. So yeah, that's really, really what I wanted to talk about, because obviously somebody, somewhere, is going to have to pick up the tab.
Yeah.
And guess what? It could be you.
Yeah, and that's something that you brought to light. I think you were saying about a statistic of... I know it's a big talking point, and you see it a lot on social media, talking about who should be paying the burden of tax in this country. Should it be the ultra-rich? Should it be the middle class? Should it be the lower class?
Yeah, I mean, obviously these things are all up for political debate, and sometimes it's fairly ideologically driven. I mean, everybody talks about fairness, but one person's fairness is not somebody else's fairness. And everybody's in favour of high taxes as long as it's not on them. So and that's the fundamental issue, isn't it? Trying to work out where the balance needs to be struck. So, and the trouble is, we've got a government who tied themselves in knots because they made an election pledge they were not going to tax working people, whatever that is. Again, we haven't quite got a definition of what that is. But we do have, as we found out yesterday, 8 million people on universal credit. We've got all kinds of problems in terms of migration. We just have enormous bills that we have to pay, and of course the Labour Party is in a situation where, although it has a very large majority, it has very much sort of activist MPs who hate to see money being taken away from their pet causes. So who do you attack? You attack the people who are not natural Labour voters. Sadly, they tend to be most of our clients.
Yeah, I'd say if you hadn't have been able to tell, obviously we're outside today. Normally we'd be up in the podcast studio, but on the day of recording this, we've decided to pick the hottest day of the year so far to record this. So it's a lovely 31 degrees here in Hadley.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So we're surrounded by some nice greenery, but obviously that tends to be the people that are also now being attacked on the inheritance tax bill, i.e. farmers and landowners.
Ooh, yes, I'll cover that.
Yes, here's that live grenade. Here you go.
But it's not just farmers. Farmers get probably more airtime, but it's also effectively businesses, people like us, small family businesses. So watch out.
I say you were at the Family Business United conference a couple of weeks ago, and there are businesses there, and the clue is in the title, was family businesses.
Yeah.
And it's everyone there from JCB all the way down to your local corner shop that's
Absolutely.
owned by a family
Yeah,
business
yeah,
or
yeah. Very
boutique.
interesting.
And it was something you said about the people you were meeting and the issues that they're having. It doesn't matter how big a company they are; it's the same issue.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's the same old problems occur over and over. But the trouble is, small business, by its very nature, tends to be very disparate organisations that they're not in a position to communicate with each other because they're just trying to deal with every day. So it's very difficult to create a kind of movement and a lobby group to defend your corner. Big corporates have departments where they lobby government, so they can effectively get their voice heard. Small business just doesn't have that.
No, I know. I think it's Paul Andrews from Family Business United spends a lot of his time lobbying to support family businesses, and I think we need more people in that kind of space that are standing up for small, medium, but family businesses because, like you said, they are a serious backbone of the country's economy. They employ lots of people. They support small towns normally because they tend to be where people set up where they live. Before you have to move into the massive conglomerate side of it, and you're looking for industrial space. But for the most part of it, they're in little towns and villages.
Yeah, that's right.
But I know you've got some notes that you've brought for today.
Indeed.
Was there a couple of topics that you wanted to start on?
Well, I put together a little title, which I thought, let's be a little bit provocative. I put the title as "This Government is Coming for You and Everything You Thought You Owned."
There you go. You can see that on the front page of the Telegraph tomorrow.
Okay, I'm going to get a bit techie and a bit sort of political now, which I apologise for. But many years ago, I did a history and politics degree, and it was learning lots and lots of different ideas from different people. And some things strike a chord with you, and some things not so much.
Yeah.
But one of the people that I really find interesting is Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman is one of those people who is often quoted, or was often quoted by Margaret Thatcher, Keith Joseph, and various members of that whole sort of late 70s, early 80s sort of monetarist movement. I thought this was a great quote to kick off with. This is from Milton Friedman. Government has three primary functions. It should provide for military defence of the nation. It should enforce contracts between individuals. It should protect citizens from crimes against themselves or their property. When government, in pursuit of good intentions, tries to rearrange the economy, legislate morality, or help special interests, the costs come in inefficiency, lack of motivation, and loss of freedom. Government should be a referee and not an active player. And I think that sums it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're playing economy bingo right now, you've got some serious boxes crossed off there with things that aren't happening, and unfortunately things that are happening.
Yeah, sadly, we seem to be governed by student politics, and that's very damaging for the economy. We have borrowing rates now. I think the bond rate, we're now borrowing money at 5.6% on sort of 15-year gilts. This is borrowing just to pay for the borrowing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't end well unless something's done about it.
It's scary, and I think it's a scary prospect. I know it was something that Andrew mentioned when we asked him what his biggest concern was, financial concern right now. His biggest concern was the country, rather than anything individually, because of borrowing, excessive expenditure, and just the risk of hyperinflation or inflation moving on to a point where it's just uncontrollable.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm a perennial optimist, so these things are always fixable. The trouble is, we have a government with a significant majority, so it's not going to be fixable for a little while, and we just have to sit back and watch and wait and see what comes forth. But we'll see.
But because we're obviously, at the time of recording this, obviously for August as such, we're now a couple of months away from the next budget, which will be a big talking point. And obviously, what happened in the last budget sent shockwaves, not just in the UK, but globally.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens in November, or end of October, November. But what else have you got in your little stat sheets?
Well, I mean, I'll cover a few things in what we're going to talk about. Again, something Shadow Chancellor Sir Mel Stride said yesterday. Tax rises are coming to paper over the cracks of the Chancellor's economic mismanagement. Nothing is safe under Labour, not your job, not your business, your farm, your savings or your pension. Rachel Reeves is taxing your family's future to fund her failure. Bit harsh perhaps, but you get the sentiment. The the irony is, of course, we've had 14 years of Conservative government, and really, they haven't really helped the problem.
No, I think that's something that's really important to mention. Obviously, we're talking a lot about the issues that have come out of Labour recently, but it's not something that has just happened overnight. Like you allude to, this is something that's been bubbling for almost 20 years now, 15 years at least, when the Conservatives had a majority for a considerable amount of time, even though the Lib Dems came in occasionally here or there, but it was predominantly the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And it's now something that they're now turning all of these issues as, it's Labour. But actually, this is the same things that will happen.
Oh, yeah, it's been going on for ages. I mean, I'll touch on it, but there's certain things that there's so much fiscal drag from the fact that different tax rates have not increased in 15 years. So, but I mean, one of the things that the two main areas I wanted to cover is the number one area where most governments get their tax from, income tax. That's one area. It's quite interesting when you actually look at the statistics because the Labour government committed to not raising income tax, they're having to find other ways of doing it. And I thought it would be interesting to do a little comparison between the UK and, as we're talking about Milton Friedman, let's talk about the US, because they have definitely the most dynamic economy in the world. What are they doing differently to us that seems to work so much better?
Fire away. What have you got?
Okay, well, let's touch it first upon income tax. Let's have a look. For now, I'd like to focus on income tax and inheritance tax. The former has been a focus for repeated increases to taxation for successive governments over a generation, to the extent that Labour pledged not to announce direct increases to income tax rates in its autumn budget. It did, however, extend the income tax threshold freeze until 2030. So this is effectively saying we're not going to increase the banding. So if you've got inflation running at sort of 3-4%, you're dragging more and more people into higher levels of tax. So effectively what they're saying is they reckon it's approximately 520,000 workers per year between now and 2030 will be drawn into high rate tax.
500,000 people?
500,000, just over 500,000 people.
You said was that a year?
A year, absolutely.
What?
So I know it's scary. The number of people paying high rate tax 15 years ago was minuscule compared to what it is now. I've got some other statistics for you. In 2004-5, the top 1% of UK income taxpayers earned 13.3% of the total income, but they paid 28.2% of the tax. So effectively what we're saying, I think we all agree that kind of progressive taxation, i.e. the richest with the broadest shoulders pay the most. That's reasonable. We live in a caring society and we have a welfare state, and that's completely fair. But again, it comes back to this whole issue of fairness. At what level do you draw that line? Just as a comparison with, I'll come on to the US, but the other one, the top 10% earned 35% of the total wealth in 24-25, and they pay just over 60% of the total tax. That's just the top 10%. Almost
two-thirds of all tax is paid by the top 10%.
Now, curiously, if you compare us to the US, you would think that our system is far more punitive on the wealthy. It's actually not. They're actually very similar. So that's not really the big area of difference. The huge area of difference, which is the main part of this podcast, is talking about inheritance tax.
Yes.
This has been the big target. At the moment, well, actually, I say at the moment, the statistic is based upon current estimates. By 2030, 7% of all estates will be paying inheritance tax.
Do you know what it is currently?
I think it's about 4. But with the changes they're bringing in, it's going to go up to 7 over the next throughout the term of this government.
So we're looking at almost double.
Yeah, absolutely. But what's interesting is that in America, that figure is less than 0.2%, not 2%, 0.2%, and there's a very fundamental reason for that. If you look at if you're a single person, you start paying inheritance tax on any asset that you own above the value of £325,000. Now, to be fair, that's not a huge sum.
No, I mean, in this part of the world, that's not even a house.
Yeah. In the US, they don't call it inheritance tax. They call it estate taxes. So you have the federal estate tax, and that kicks in at $13.9 million US. So, in other words, just over £10 million. Wow. So, as you can see, the difference is huge. Hence, such a small number of people actually pay it. It's not just that; they also have different dispensations for agricultural land for farmers, and also for privately held businesses, so family businesses in particular.
Yeah.
So because basically they see that these are the wealth producers and they don't want to compromise those businesses just because somebody happens to die at an inopportune moment.
We don't want to lose them, isn't it?
No, of course not. They're the people driving the economy. They're the employers. They're the ones employing people who then pay tax, who then put into the system.
I know in the US there's been a lot of moving around. Obviously, states have different taxes themselves. I know income tax is a big thing in the states. I think it's California has about 30% income tax, whereas states like Texas and Florida.
I mean, there's the system in America is slightly different. You have your federal inheritance tax rate, or estate tax, and you also have estate tax from the individual states. So some of the states will kick in at incredibly low figures, like $5 million. That would be the lowest you're going to find.
Only $5 million.
But also the rates vary as well. In the UK, you pay tax on anything over £325,000. You pay at 40%.
Yes.
In America, you're looking at more like 18%.
Wow.
So it's a massive difference.
That is huge.
And that is the fundamental difference between our economy and theirs. But so that's where we are. And then we look at this whole, talking about this fiscal drag. This 325 figure, that came into play in 2009-10 tax year.
Wow.
So we're talking about under a Labour government, but don't forget, in that time, we've had 14 years of Conservative government, and they've frozen it.
Yeah.
So what happens? Prices have gone up in that time 71%. So £100,000, well, £100,000 buying power in 2009, you'd now need £171,000 to buy the same amount of goods. That's the difference. So as you can see, so many more people are being dragged into this trap. So our job as financial advisors is obviously trying to navigate this and trying to find ways of at least mitigating it. So we'll look to mitigate it for our clients and do our very best to make the government's job even harder.
Yeah.
So I've written a little list.
I must say, this is wonderful to see how prepared you are for this. This is,
not like me, is it?
No, I've known you since I was the age of 7, so 20 odd years. I think this is possibly the most you've ever prepared for anything, and it's so impressed.
That's harsh. That's how how driven I am on this particular issue. But as far as I see, some people would disagree with me, but I just think the system now, the fairness dial has shifted so far away from the wealthier people in this country. And when I say wealthier, I don't mean wealthy, I just mean wealthier. So £325,000 is not a big number, let's be honest. The average house price in the southeast of England is higher than that.
Yeah.
So most people who are homeowners are going to fall into this trap.
Yeah, and then I think, like you say, that also pushes people to maybe get into committed relationships, marriage, sooner than they possibly would.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously ways you can mitigate it using this system as it is. If you're married, you can you can combine those two amounts, so there's no inheritance tax between spouses. My 58-year-old sister just told me last week that she's getting married.
Hey, congratulations!
Yeah, we've been giving her that advice for the last 16 years with her partner. But good luck to her. I think that's from apart from the emotional side of it, from a pure tax point of view, very sound, very sound tax plan.
I can't wait to hear that line in the speeches on the evening.
Sorry if you're watching.
Congratulations, though.
Yes, congratulations. Exactly. So freeze on thresholds.
Yes.
So nil rate band, 325,000, and residence nil rate band have been frozen since 2009 and were previously set to remain unchanged until 2028. Labour have extended this freeze until April 2030. The impact: with inflation and rising asset values, e.g. property prices, more estates will exceed the £325,000 threshold, increasing the number of estates liable for inheritance tax. This fiscal drag effectively boosts tax revenue without changing rates or thresholds. The Office for Budget Responsibility predicts IHT receipts will rise from 7.6 million in 2024-25 to 14.3 billion by 2030.
Sorry, do you mind repeating this? I think you said million on the first one.
Sorry, I apologise. 7.6 billion in 2024-25 to 14.3 billion by 2029-30.
Those monstrous numbers.
Big numbers. That's just a start. There's a few other points I need to cover as well. Number 2, inclusion of unused pension pots in inheritance tax. This is massive.
Yeah, this is the big one.
The government talk it down and say it's not that big, it's only affecting a very small number of people. Well, guess what? It's all my clients. So This is the measure. From April 2027, unused pension pots and death benefits will be included in the estate for inheritance tax purposes. Currently, pensions are exempt from inheritance tax if the deceased dies before age 75, or subject only to income tax for beneficiaries of over 75. This change targets wealthier estates that use pensions as a tax-efficient way to pass on assets. It's estimated to affect around 8% of estates, particularly those with significant pension savings. This reverses the previous pension freedom rules that made pensions attractive for IHT planning. This has fundamentally changed the way we're approaching a lot of our clients in terms of how they actually factor in the money they spend in retirement, including my 85-year-old father, who we've now basically said, stop preserving the pension, start spending it, because if you don't spend it, the government will spend it for you.
It's a massive change for advice, and
I mean,
we're not alone in that. Other advisors, it's the same with that. Everyone's having the same conversations.
What's been interesting in the last 10, 15 years, so many people have actually come out of final salary pension schemes with really, really very attractive transfer rates. They're given a capital sum figure that they can then transfer into a private self-invested personal pension. And these numbers have been really big. I mean, even people with relatively modest jobs will be coming out with seven-figure pension totals. So, and they did it. Obviously they do it for various types of flexibility, but part of that was being able to free that money up to be able to pass it on to their children. Obviously, and to their spouse. That's now going to become more difficult. So it's not impossible, but it's definitely more difficult. So now we're having to factor in. Maybe sometimes it's worth spending the pension money, even if you're taking it and you're paying 40% tax on it. It's still worth taking it because it's 40%. You're going to at least get money to spend in your lifetime.
And there was also an article that came out from Rachel Reeves this week, I think it was. But it was saying from April 2027. Sorry if I'm reading this from here. HMRC will slap inheritance tax on pension pots for those who die before 55 and rising to 57 in 2028, even though they couldn't access their savings yet.
Yeah, how crazy is that? But so in other words, you're not actually in a position to do anything about it.
No, it's unbelievably unfair.
Yeah, I would completely agree. But other opinions are available.
Yes, obviously, but our opinion is that it's unbelievably unfair.
Yes, absolutely. So there we go. That's pensions pots coming into inheritance tax. Point 3. Reform of agricultural property relief and business property relief. For all of you who've seen tractors turning up outside the Houses of Parliament, that's what this is all about. For those who don't know, we're based in Suffolk. It's quite a rural area. This affects a lot of our neighbours.
Yes. The whole East Anglia, though, realistically, you've got Norfolk, Suffolk, and obviously then pushing up into Lincolnshire along those ways. It's very farming dominated, this part of the world.
It's a very, very hot topic. So
hot topic.
But that said, I mean, the thing about farmers is that they are in a position to be noticed. They can drive a tractor and they can block the streets in the middle of Whitehall. Exactly the same restrictions are applying to small businesses. And they don't have that voice. I know I've touched on this before, but I think it's really important not to let the small businesses get left behind. And the truth is, a lot of our clients run small businesses. A lot of them perhaps have sold their small businesses. And relying on this wealth, again, hoping that they'll be able to pass it on to their heirs, which is now going to be more difficult. Just so you know, just so you can know what these measures are, from April 2026, agricultural property relief and business property relief will remain at 100%, but only on the first £1 million. So, you might have a small business. It doesn't have to be huge to be worth more than £1 million. I mean, a lot of companies they'll just have that in assets.
Yes.
We used to look after a pension scheme for a printing company. I mean, they had printing presses worth well over £1 million. So
that's the thing, and if again, I know I'm referring a lot to what Andrew said last week. If you're in your field and you're pushing, you want to be the best. You're going to have that requires investment, infrastructure,
capital investment, exactly. So, but I mean, and you just imagine a farm. I mean, imagine the equipment they have. A combine harvester. I don't suppose you get much change out of a combine harvester. I have no idea. I've never bought one, but they so assets above £1 million will only receive relief at 50%. So in other words, anything over £1 million, the inheritance tax rate is 40%. You will pay half of that, so you'll be paying 20% on everything.
Wow.
So, and if you're a small business, how is that going to work? You've got someone who's the principal of your firm. He then drops dead. And then basically all the clients are now thinking, oh, we might leave now because the guy who's been looking after us for the last 30 years is no longer there. So they then walk away, but you just had your business valued at £10 million, for example. You're now having to pay, 20% on 9 million quid. So that's, I should have said 11 million, but a lot easier to work out.
11 million pounds.
So something just short of £2 million. 1.8 million.
Goodness me.
That business has now got to find 1.8 billion.
I think this
8
is
million, sorry.
This is the big point, isn't it? I know I saw this there was a debate recently where they were debating this exact topic. I know it was particularly on farmers, saying they might have an inheritance tax bill that's the equivalent of 8 years of their profits that they're then expected to pay.
But
in one lump.
You can create the ideological argument and say, these people are very wealthy, they should be paying.
Yeah.
But let's just think it on through. If you run a small business and you're suddenly dumped with a £2 million tax bill, who's going to be paying for that? It's going to be paid for by the staff, the people who get made redundant because you can't afford to pay them.
Yeah.
It's going to be the whole business is going to be compromised because it's going to shrink. It has to shrink. And yet these are small, privately owned businesses who are potentially having to compete with perhaps national businesses which don't have that problem because they're owned by individual shareholders. They're not privately owned. It's a completely different setup for them. So this comes right back to my original point. If you're a large corporation, you can lobby government and you can basically skew the dial in your favour. If you're a small business, nobody's listening. So and nobody's thought these things through. No lobbyist is sitting in their corner going, "Let's think this through, Mrs. Reeves. This cannot work." So this is why I feel so passionate about it, because it's just ill thought out legislation. Yeah, it makes no sense.
No,
but the people it will hurt the hardest are not the people who are dead because they're dead. It's going to be the people who work for them. Simple as that. Are they deserving of that? I don't think so. So, to recap, the changes to agricultural and business property relief, this is going to affect estates with high-value farms or businesses, reducing tax relief for larger holdings. The government estimates that 3/4 of estates claiming agricultural property relief will remain unaffected, protecting smaller farmers and businesses. However, larger estates will face increased tax liabilities, potentially requiring asset sales to cover the IHT cost. Revenue estimate, combined with AIM share reforms, this is expected to raise 1.8 billion by 2030.
1.8 billion.
Yeah.
And that compares to the IHT bill that you mentioned that could get up to 14 billion.
Yeah. But hey, let's not worry about that too much. We have just paid Mauritius 34 billion for the Chagos Islands, so I guess that bill's got to be picked up somehow. Ironically, the Mauritians no longer pay income tax, or at least they won't for the next 12 months.
That's like 31 billion pound over.
Yeah, let's rub a bit of salt in that wound. Anyway, let's get on to point 4. This doesn't affect a huge number of people, but it's worth mentioning. Reduction in business property relief for AIM shares. From April 2026, business property relief for shares listed on the alternative investment market and other unquoted shares will be reduced from 100% to 50%, resulting in an effective inheritance tax rate of 20% on these assets. AIM shares were previously exempt if held for 2 years, making them a popular tax planning tool. Effectively, this will affect relatively small numbers of people, but it's part of this 1.8 billion that we've just been talking about.
Who were mainly the users of AIM shares? It's not something you see very commonly talked about.
No, I mean, generally it's a way of stimulating investment into start-up businesses.
Right, I see.
I think if you look at companies like, I'm just trying to think of good examples, I know Zoopla would be one of them. Lots of kind of internet-based startups have had seed funding from AIM investment. So it's private investors, effectively private equity, putting money into new ideas. And obviously the risk factor of that is very, very high. So that's the reason you get the tax breaks. So of course the inevitable knock-on result of this is there's going to be a lot less kind of seed capital available for small business. So inevitably there's going to be less startups because
it's going to stunt innovation, unfortunately.
But that's an inevitable consequence, I'm afraid. But so then we come on to, my final point.
This is like the worst Christmas list ever.
It is a really poor Christmas, yeah.
Everyone's it's so doom and gloom. Please tell me this last point is at least slightly positive.
Never mind. We can't worry about it. At least we won the Lions tour. That's all.
Oh yes, we beat the Australians. That's all we care about.
But, yes, exactly.
Some national pride and the Euros.
And the Euros, fantastic. Yeah, exactly. Who can begrudge anybody that? So point 5. Shift in residency-based IHT system. This is all about non-DOMs, which people talk about a lot. This is And everybody says, "Oh, these evil non-doms, they're the very rich people. These are the people we need to target because they're the ones who are not paying enough tax." Well, guess what? They're the ones who spend a huge sums of money in the City of London,
Yes.
and various other places, buying up properties, spending money in Selfridges. Other stores are available. But they're very mobile people. They can move around wherever they want to. They're ultra rich. They love coming to London. They love spending money in London. But if you make the system work against them and you make a hostile environment for them, they're going to go somewhere else. It's as simple as that. Then there's plenty other countries.
So there's not a shortage of nice places to go.
Absolutely, there's loads of countries out there desperate for non-doms to be moving to their jurisdictions and spend money. It's just the way it is. So I'll give you a little bit of the detail. From April 2025, IHT will transition from a domicile-based to a residency-based system. Non-UK domiciled individuals who have been UK residents for 10 of the past 20 years, long-term residents, will be subject to inheritance tax on their worldwide assets.
Worldwide assets, sorry.
Worldwide assets. At the moment, if you're a non-dom, you are only subject to inheritance tax on your UK-based assets.
Yes.
This targets wealthy, non-domiciled individuals, closing loopholes that allow them to avoid IHT inheritance tax on offshore assets. It aligns inheritance tax with Labour's goal of fairer taxation, and may increase tax liabilities for high net worth individuals with global assets. Right, revenue estimate. This is an estimate, and I do not know how they can possibly come up with these numbers, because obviously it's going to change people's behaviour. But anyway, they say specific revenue figures for this measure are not isolated, but it contributes to the overall projected increase from £14.3 billion generated by inheritance tax. So we'll see. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Might have to edit that bit.
So you've actually out-planned yourself now.
I have. So specific revenue figures for this measure are not isolated, but it contributes to the overall projected increase to £14.3 billion. That's for inheritance tax across the board.
Right.
Extension of agricultural property relief to environmental land agreements. This is a bit obscure now, but I'm going to put it in just because it's relevant. From April 2026, agricultural property relief will be extended to land managed under environmental agreements with the UK or devolved governments, incentivising sustainable land use. Again, it's a bit of a virtue signalling cause, just trying to sort of manipulate people's behaviour, in my opinion.
In your opinion.
So, overall impact. As a summary of all these inheritance tax changes, these measures combined are projected to nearly double IHT revenue from £7.6 billion in 2024-25 to £14.3 billion by 2029-30, driven by the threshold freeze, pension inclusion and relief reforms. April 2025 alone saw £780 million in inheritance tax receipts, the second highest monthly total, indicating the growing tax burden. Public and industry reaction. Critics, including farm groups and business owners, argue that reductions in agricultural property relief and business property relief could force sales of family farms or businesses to cover tax bills, impacting food security and small business stability. That is undoubtedly true.
Undoubtedly.
Sorry.
Undoubtedly.
But so that broadly is the point that I want to make. I mean, what I would say is, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ways of mitigating these issues, and I've inevitably got to say it. At Matthew Douglas Limited, the recommendations that we would make, without going into too much detail, we're recommending gifting assets early, using trusts, or leveraging regular gifts from surplus income to mitigate inheritance tax. The inclusion of pensions in IHT from 2027 has spurred interest in giving while living to reduce estate values. Essentially, everybody's situation is different. So it's very important to sort of sit down with us and actually go through your personal circumstances. Obviously, it's going to affect things like, what's your expected mortality? What are your timescales? I mean, let's face it, the best advice you can give for inheritance tax right now is don't die in the next 4 years. So, and hopefully, we will see a change of direction in the due course. But I've had this conversation with my 85-year-old father, and he's very much on board.
Yes, so you might see shares in cryogenic freezing going up with people that possibly hold the same sentiment as that. But I know our
Something for another podcast.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, looking at the systems that we can use to live longer. We have to get one of those health specialists on there to talk about how you can live the next 4 years. If you someone that's maybe struggling.
yeah, absolutely, so true.
We're bringing in things like we're going to bring in a Matthew Douglas aerobics team, aren't we? So that everyone gets fitter, so you can live through the next 4 years at least.
If all else fails, stick your loved ones in a freezer and bring them out and have a copy of today's newspaper every single day, so so we know they're still alive.
Absolutely. And Carol, I know you probably will be watching this from our compliance point of view. That is a joke. We're not actually giving advice on that one. Please don't do that. But
oh dear, yes.
It's always worth saying that, like you say, with anything, obviously there are risks, but the most important thing to do is sit down with a professional that knows these kind of systems inside and out. Obviously, be cautious of what you see online. I know there's articles in newspapers or social media, people saying, oh, you must invest in this. Be very careful. Make sure you sit down and talk to someone. I know a lot of the conversations that our advisors have might just be introductory ones. People want to know, actually, am I doing the right thing? Should I be thinking about this now? Or should my parents be thinking about this? And I think also it's important to actually start opening up those that avenue of having conversations with families rather than just the people at the top of the pyramid.
Absolutely, because it does. It sort of filters down to every member of the family, and it's going to affect your decision making. I think the one thing that probably is an intended consequence is I think it is making, dare I say, wealthier people. I think it's making them spend more because they're realising that ultimately the chances of being able to pass it on are more limited than they were. So. If that's what the government wants to see, they want to see more spending in the economy. I guess that is probably happening.
Yeah, I think that also leads into a point that I wanted to bring up, and it's just a light point now. It's probably something we'll dive into more in another podcast. Obviously, it ties in with our Thrive by 35 and the saving for young people. There's been a lot of conversation and a lot of rumours and a lot of articles where they're talking about, is Rachel Reeves going to come after cash ISAs, lifetime ISAs, and those investment pots? Now, it's interesting because one of the first things the government said was they want to help young people get on the housing ladder. They want to build 1.5 million new houses by 2028, I think it was, or somewhere along those lines. But now, if that's the case, then they're going after vehicles that people would be using to say, what, to buy a house, particularly young people.
I mean, there has been a lot of different sort of rumours banded about as to what's likely to happen to ISAs, LISAs. I think sometimes I feel they kind of circulate this information just to see what the reaction is going to be. So, for example, there was a lot of talk of them scrapping cash ISAs. Again, I think the banks have the lobbying power to do this. They've cobbled together and basically said that would be a very foolish thing to do because ultimately this is what's generating a lot of cash within the banks, which enables those that enables their ability to lend money for people to be able to buy property. So ultimately, you think you're doing something good on one side and you're hurting something.
But yeah, so you would recommend then people acting rather than sitting with a Help to Buy ISA?
Yeah, I think the current state of play with LISAs is, honestly, I don't think the government will pull it because I think the fallout would be too great for the amount of the amount of revenue it would actually save. But frankly, it's not worth the risk. What I would suggest is that if you were in a position to put £4,000 or up to £4,000 into a LISA today with the intention of buying your first home, then I would do it because you never know, it could get pulled next week. So I don't think it will, but it could.
But it's an interesting concept, and I think you're right where they are putting stories into the news just to kind of gauge public perception of, oh, this might happen. We could come after cash ISAs, we could come after lifetime ISAs to kind of see, okay, who's going to stir up a storm if these things do happen.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing with the precisely. They're waiting to see what the fallout's going to be and who is kicking up and to what degree. I mean, we haven't even touched upon things like wealth taxes, which I didn't want to get into on this podcast because I'm sure we could do it on another one. But it does to me seem utterly nonsensical to have a conversation about wealth taxes that you may or may not be doing. Because what's going to happen? You end up with the worst of both worlds. You end up not applying a wealth tax because you realise it's unworkable. But in the meantime, you're threatening to put a wealth tax in. So what do? People in that situation, thinking this could be me, they're putting their properties up for sale and they're leaving. Simple as that.
Well, it brings me back to where we talk about previously with Gordon Brown, wasn't it? The conversation you and I had. It was very much the case about when they talked about selling all the gold.
Oh yeah. I mean, how nuts is that? It's we're going back to the days when Gordon Brown was Chancellor, and he sold off all our gold reserves at bargain basement prices, and then promptly told everybody about it, so that they, which is why the price dropped even further. So surprise, he flooded the market, and the price dropped out. The bottom fell out of it. Whereas now, gold prices, I haven't actually looked what the difference is, but I mean, gold has been probably the best asset class to be in the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Obviously, it depends on what it is you need, but I think it's always important to kind of keep these types of things in mind, just because yes, we see a lot of stuff in the news, and I mean, I alluded to it earlier, everything slightly seems doom and gloom a lot of the time nowadays.
Yeah.
But there are still positives, I think. I think, if anything, the turmoil that is on a lot of people's minds is possibly opening up more doors for people to talk about finances now. And I think it's slowly kind of breaking down that barrier of it being a taboo subject for families to talk about money.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is
that's
one of the positives. I think a second positive is that more young people, I think, now are taking an interest in finance because they're realising it's not as easy as, I can just work and then buy a house. I'm actually having to do other things now. Yeah,
the trouble is it doesn't send a good message if you're basically saying, you work hard all your life, build up your wealth, and then somebody's going to take it away from you.
Yeah, or you have to downsize because they can't afford it.
Yeah, I think, but at the same time, I mean, again, I take a more optimistic view on these things. If you're a young person, if you have a house, you are a stakeholder in society. You care what happens to your economy. If you're literally just earning a wage and spending your money week by week, you're not really invested. You're not really invested in the whole system. So ultimately, you're just going to try and take it for whatever you can get.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We want a society in which people feel invested and part of it, and we're all part of a large national community, and we want to see the best for the nation.
Absolutely. Well, talking to communities, we'd love you to join us. Make sure that you go and give us a follow. Subscribe to the channel. Obviously, you can find us for these types of podcasts. Obviously, they're available on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. Hopefully, soon coming to Apple as well. That's where you get your podcasts from. I mean, on top of that, we do daily videos on most social media platforms. I know there's TikToks, Instagram, Facebooks, LinkedIn, those types of things. So make sure you do give us a follow. The link will be in the description.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is do engage with us. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about and you think would be helpful, then clearly let us know and flag it up, and we'll do our best to incorporate it if we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's on a full podcast video like today, or we might do just a slightly longer format video, maybe answering your questions to a Q&A with Matthew. So get your questions in. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. Check the comments there as well. But no, I think it's a really important topic today, I think, but it's worth talking about. And I think the more that it will hopefully be discussed, not just by us, but hopefully by lobby groups and in government, we might see some changes, hopefully, for the better.
And also, if you think our position and our attitudes on these things is completely out of order, bring it on. I'd love to hear from you. I really would. I'd love to debate it with you.
I mean, I think that's an important thing. Obviously, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Obviously, everyone's entitled to what they believe in with regards to what their political views are, what their ethical views are with regards to taxes and who should burden everything. I think that's important to mention. Obviously, these are just some of the views from a statistical point of view from financial advising side. Obviously, not everyone might agree with that, and you're allowed to have your opinions, but we'd love to hear them. If you've got thoughts, if you're very strongly believing, saying, no, we should be putting more tax onto that ultra high net worth people, or pushing more people down the tax of private school taxation, we'd love to hear about it, because we want to know what your thoughts are and why that is, because it's something that we're keen to know about.
That would be a good subject for a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
VAT on private school fees.
Yeah, there you go. Well, keep tuned. Maybe next one. But thank you very much for today, Matthew. Obviously, enjoy the weather. Sun seems to have disappeared now. We're just hot, which is
it is very
less
hot and
than
sticky.
less enjoyable. But I mean, the conversation was warm as well. So hopefully, it's something that we can keep going, and let's say just keep tuned for episode 4, which will be coming in the end of September. Where who knows, we might have another guest for you, or you might be blessed with Matthew and I once more. But keep tuned. We want to hear your comments, and we will see you soon. Matthew, thank you for today.
Thank you. Cheers, Harry.
Take care.